Hello and welcome back to the Villa podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, Aston Villa 1, Manchester City nil. Crisis? What crisis? What were we talking about on Thursday, mate? What were we talking about? What a win. What a performance more than anything, mate. And I think, we can probably say that every single player to a T that contributed in this match really, really put one hell of a shift in.
Oh, mate, absolutely. I think this fixture has often been a real acid test for various kind of iterations of the Unai Emery era. And I think of all the games that, all the amazing nights, your Bayerns, your PSGs, like those kind of games. It's I think often fans look back to the City game, the 1-0 win in December 2023 with the kind of Leon Bailey deflection as like when this Unai Emery era really came to a peak. That was the game that I think generally, if you speak to people, that we were like, we've never really, and it would be very difficult, it's not necessarily a criticism, it would be very hard to do so, but we very rarely scaled those heights. We looked in like incredible that night. And I think we've kind of, as I said, we've had other great moments ever since and continue to do so. And I'm not saying that this win was quite on that level, but there were kind of echoes of it. I felt, as you say, like particularly to the fact that, to a man, I thought everybody was incredible. I thought everyone played their part really, really well. There were some kind of unique tweaks that we made for this game that I thought set us up really, really nicely. And yeah, to a man, I thought we were absolutely excellent. And so, yeah, maybe not quite the performance, maybe not quite the City team that we had back in December 2023. But you know what? Probably wasn't too far off.
Mate, they all count. They all count. And coming into this game, I think Erling Haaland was on a 12 games goal scoring run, and he'd scored, I believe, 22 goals in that period of time. So to keep Erling Haaland quiet is some feat, really. I think when you look at, like, you're right, this City team isn't the City team of old, and been talking a lot about aura recently on the podcast. It's been a bit of a motif of the podcast, hasn't it, mate? Aura. And Manchester
Yeah.
City have kind of lost that aura that they had. You probably have to go back 3 seasons now, really, to look at a Manchester City team that I think everybody in the league seriously feared and was an extremely formidable side. But I think, first of all, mate, I think it all starts with the lineup. I think we have to go through that because I think that is where, we spoke about it on Thursday. That lineup on Thursday against Go Ahead Eagles should have got the job done, but it didn't. And, we kind of said, didn't we, mate, that look, if you go and rotate like you did and save all the big dogs for Sunday and you don't show up on Sunday, it's a bit embarrassing. But we obviously go and I think, Buendia starting, how great is that? It's obviously a shame that he goes off injured. He was looking really, really uh like full of confidence, funnily enough, which I didn't necessarily expect after the penalty miss in the Netherlands on Thursday. He was great. I thought, obviously, I think we were pretty critical on Emmy's performance, Emmy Martinez, that is, after the Europa League game. But, he's definitely righted some wrongs in this game, hasn't he, mate? I think he made some very important saves. And again, to go back to the aura, that aura still doesn't quite feel there with him. But this was more of a business as usual goalkeeping performance that, we've come to expect from somebody like Emmy.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think that's exactly it. I don't think he did anything like unbelievable in this game, but did everything that was expected of him. We talk about keeping Erling Haaland pretty quiet. Aside from the disallowed goal, the only moment he really had was that one-on-one in the first half, running through towards the Holte end, which Emi made the save down to his right. It was a better performance from him. Yeah, I think a shame about Buendia, but I thought we saw some of the better moments. The kind of real flashes of Jadon Sancho in this game whilst he was on the pitch. There's that kind of mazy dribble he goes on in the second half and forces a couple of saves, a double save out of Donnarumma. And so, yeah, I thought genuinely everybody was excellent. I found it really, really difficult to kind of put a man of the match on this. The Sky coverage gave it to Amadou Onana, who I definitely wanted to shout out. I thought he was
Absolutely.
absolutely incredible. I think personally, my man of the match would have been Ezri Konsa, but you can kind of pick names out of a hat, to be honest with you. I thought everybody was incredible. Both you and I had, I don't want to say fears, but both I think both you and I singled out Tyrone Mings as maybe the centre half that would have been the better physical match for Erling Haaland. But I thought Pau Torres was great as that goal line clearance he makes, which was amazing. Boubacar Kamara did a really, really nice job as well. He was kind of slotting him to a back five almost when we were without the ball. He was kind of in amongst the centre halves, and we were kind of defending in that kind of 5-4-1 shape, with Ollie being an out ball, a role which I thought he did really, really well today as well. But yeah, I thought Booba was amazing. I thought Ezri was amazing. Definitely shout out to Amadou. I thought he was great. Both fullbacks I thought were really, really good. Obviously, we'll get on to Cash and his goal. But yeah, there wasn't really anyone that kind of left me wanting, to be honest with you, at the end of the game. It was a really, really good performance. And I think both of us were in agreement that although the performance wasn't great on Thursday night, I don't think it's a true reflection of the moment that this Villa team is in. I don't think it's a true reflection of how good we are. I think it was just a blip. It was a difficult game in very difficult conditions and just kind of a banana skin that we slipped up on. And we'd won five in a row before that. That would have been six in a row. It didn't really feel like that was okay. We're right back to square one here, and it's good that to know that maybe there's something in that defeat. Maybe there is something in that defeat. The fact that we did lose that game was the kind of the reality check. Not that I thought we were getting carried away, but just that you can't ever take any game for granted, really. And it kind of maybe just set our sights that bit narrower for this game, and enabled us to kind of go out there today and prove a few, not that we had anyone to prove wrong either, but just to kind of put the record straight and show everybody just exactly where this Villa team is right now, which is most certainly on the up. And we've got a very difficult game next weekend at Anfield, which will be another great test, but a good bit of rest between now and then. But yeah, some absolutely monstrous performances that I think will definitely do well for having that week off.
Absolutely. I mean, doesn't this week just sum up being an Aston Villa fan? You go away
Yeah.
to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, you get, a riveting 2-1 win. You've got the Morgan Rogers absolute beauty of a goal, like announcing himself back like he was never gone. Emi Buendia, revival, unbelievable goal. The build up to that was amazing. You can obviously go away on the Thursday night in the Europa League.
Yeah.
You go and lose to go ahead Eagles again. There's no shame in that at all. But it sums Villa up that we've come and bounced back with a 1-0 win against Manchester City. So that's three consecutive wins against Manchester City at Villa Park. And that feels good, mate, because for the longest time, they just beat up everybody. They absolutely beat up everybody. So, you're right. We couldn't have done it without some of those performances. And I wanted to circle back to Amadou Onana because AVFC Stato, best tweet of the day, really. Shout out to AVFC Stato because Amadou Onana's numbers were just an absolute joke. And I must read them out because, to quote Tyrone Mings, let your apology be as loud as the disrespect. Okay. 90 minutes, 98% passing accuracy, 57 touches, 100% accurate long balls. That's 4 out of 4. Three tackles, one, four blocks, one. That's the highest in the Villa team and in the game, I believe. Three clearances, two headed clearances, and won 86% of his ground duels, which was six. It was an absolute monster class. And, the dialogue around Amadou and even around, we've spoken to death about, the narrative that surrounds Matty Cash, mate, at this point. And I think we can finally say at this point that that is sort of dead and buried and long gone. I think he's winning round people as each game week goes by. But in terms of Amadou Onana, somebody who's been described as a cheerleader, like some of the things you see online, mate, I just like there's. I think it's safe to say there's going to have been a lot of deleted tweets about Amadou Onana and Matty Cash as well, mate. And I think I don't want to say I questioned the decision to play Onana when I saw the lineup because I think it made sense to have a combative force in there. I just maybe perhaps questioned if it was too soon, but it clearly wasn't. And he was exactly what we needed in that game. And, as you say, with how Kamara was dropping in to make that sort of back five in what feels like a much more traditional Emery system and performance, right, of years that have gone by, especially against these bigger teams. You need somebody like Amadou Onana to stand up who will go toe to toe with Erling Haaland in a foot race and then go and nick the ball off him and
Yeah.
really impose yourself on a team like Manchester City because it's so easy to look at Manchester City and go, wow, what a wonderful football inside. Even the season that they're having, which by their standards, of course, isn't world class, they always play good football. And I think the one thing that always goes under the radar and has to be mentioned about Manchester City is this lot are some of the dirtiest fuckers in the entire league. You look at Pep Guardiola, somebody who built a whole career essentially on 5 yard passing and just absolutely smashing the shit out of his opponents. So, his team absolutely reflect that. And it's something that often gets overlooked with Manchester City. So you needed that kind of presence from Amadou, and that was brilliant. And
Yep.
guys like him in the midfield, I think it gives you the license to go and be a little bit, do you ride your luck a little bit? There's obviously questions about whether it should have been a corner that led to the goal, mate. Shit happens as far as I'm concerned. That'll happen against us, it'll happen for us throughout the rest of the season. As frustrating as those can be, I am generally of the belief that those tend to even themselves out, but what a lovely set piece. But I mean, I say a lovely set piece, mate. Matty Cash has kind of come out after the game, hasn't he? And stole Austin McPhee's thunder.
Yeah. Yeah. He kind of scored that goal and it hit me. I was kind of like, I think if it was over today, probably my player of the season,
Wow.
Matty Cash.
I hear it. I hear it, mate.
I I think for even when, you kind of go right back to the goal at Sunderland, like just the kind of, it doesn't really feel like anyone's been consistently brilliant this season. Um, from the moment we kind of got going, and I'm not saying that necessarily Matty Cash has either, but he's just had so many moments throughout the season where we really, really needed somebody. The goal at Sunderland, that ball at Spurs, the goal today. I do genuinely believe that like he is right up there, and I've been pretty vocal in my criticism of Matty Cash as well. I don't think he's perfect, but it looks like there's a new deal coming his way as well. That is when you kind of hear what the journos are saying about that deal, he's a player that Unai and the other guys around Bodymore consider pretty critical to the project and what they're building, which I think says everything. And again, like has just been, yeah, another kind of big moment for him. And say what you want about Matty Cash, but these are becoming fairly regular events in his time in a Villa shirt, moments where he's shown that he is good value for a few good goals a season, a few good goals a season as well. And yeah, just kind of has these habits of coming up pretty clutch in big moments. And look, I know that he's also done the opposite at the other end, and he's given away a fair few penalties when maybe we didn't need it and stuff like that. Maybe he let a few wingers drift in at the back stick. And as I say, I know that he's not perfect, but this season I do think he's taken a pretty considerable leap and has really made that right back spot his own. And I know there's not a tremendous amount of competition, but yeah, just kind of delivering these moments again is a really, really nice finish. You can't say much more than that. And so yeah, fair play to him. It was a really, really nice goal. And yeah, to kind of beat Donnarumma like that all ends up he had absolutely no chance. You have to give him a lot of credit. And for points throughout his Villa career from Matty Cash, credit has been pretty hard to come by. So when the flowers are due, you got to hand it to him.
Yeah, do you know what is so impressive about the goal as well? Is he's managed to find like where the side netting and the corner of the net meet. And
Yeah.
like even for somebody as lanky as Donnarumma, that's so hard to save. And obviously I think he's caught wrong-footed as well, but it's a testament to how quickly it all happened. The ball obviously comes in, Kashi weaves in, manages to get a shot away with his left foot, kind of goes between, I think there's maybe Stones and Gvardiol, and Donnarumma has absolutely no time to react. His feet are set the complete wrong way, probably expecting a shot to the other side, and even maybe with his right foot as well. I think it would have been fair to assume, but it all happened so fast. And and like again, like it's not just the goal though, mate. Like he's come up against Savinho today. He's come up against Jeremy Doku. Like these are two of the best wingers in the Premier League, mate. And we're kind of like it feels like we're past this stage with Cash now, where you're like, oh God, you fear for like maybe a double up, or you fear for like some of the top left wingers in the league coming up against him. Like locked him up, man. He locked him up. He did what he needed to do, and it's I was kind of having this conversation with my old man at the game. Again, like not to sound like a broken record, but talking about Martinez and the sort of like the evaporation of aura and stuff like that, I was kind of I got thinking, I'm like, well, Matty Cash is somebody who, okay, technically, is he the best player in the team? Probably not. Is he, is he somebody who gets a lot of stick and perhaps some of it being unwarranted? Absolutely. And I look at Emmy and I'm like, the obviously kind of up until this point, right? The amount of faith and goodwill and just unconditional, unwavering support that we've given somebody like Martinez for him to then go and again, it's not my thoughts on the whole transfer saga are very well documented. It really doesn't bother me as much as this conversation kind of makes it sound like. But for him to, be as visibly upset about the move not happening and for him to not play and do all of this stuff, like you just look at Matty Cash, right, and what he's doing, and the support
Yep.
is still pretty split on him, right, and his opinion. And of course, like who knows? There could have been like 50 failed moves of Matty Cash moving to wherever, whoever. It just kind of got me thinking. I'm like, if if only we could give Cashy like an ounce of what we gave Emmy, because he's somebody who deserves that support, especially at this moment, right? I feel that's why it's so
Yep.
important. Like it feels like we mention him every week, mate, but it's kind of to counteract all of the times we've slagged him off, right? In
Yeah.
in
No,
in
no.
the past as well. But I do genuinely feel like he deserves that kind of love and respect. And like when all's said and done, mate, I know you're talking about player of the season. There's a serious argument when he leaves Aston Villa, when he hangs up his boots, that he's Aston Villa's best right back in the Premier League era.
Mhm.
That's like not even it's
Yeah.
not even like a controversial thing to say, and is that an indictment of our fullbacks, perhaps? But those are the facts. When all's said and done, Matty Cash will have been Aston Villa's best right back in the Premier League, arguably. So I feel
Yeah.
like it is just important to give him that love.
Mate, I couldn't agree more. And that's why I give tremendous amount of respect to Luca Dean because those are players that come into every season having to prove themselves.
Yeah,
If you straw polled Villa fans on the opening day of the summer transfer window, it's like, right, who are your outgoing? Everybody goes, Matty Cash, Luke. Do you know what I mean? Like you start with
absolutely.
those kind of more unglamorous like fullback positions, and those are two players. Tyrone Mings, I think you can put into that bracket as well. There are kind of a few players dotted throughout the squad that kind of like every season have to come in and prove themselves. They know they're maybe not like necessarily fan favorites, rightly or wrongly, and they continue to just nail down these spots and make them their own. And that I think it's more. I think criticism, as I've said on this podcast, is more fairly directed at someone like Ian Matson, right? And I
Yeah,
kind of said this on the Thursday part as someone that's like, you know, the fact that we kind of just gloss over the fact that he is still nowhere close to being Aston Villa's number one starting left back. Like, if we go through another whole season of the Ian Matt, like, what is the point where we kind of say, is this guy? It's just not like, do you know what I
yeah,
mean? And like, I'm always I never really like criticizing anybody, but I think, I do ask questions more so of players like that than someone of like Matty Cash because it's clear that look, Unai's got more of a footballing brain than both you and I and almost everybody listening to this podcast put together, right? And if he continues to pick players, he's seeing something that we don't. And you look at Matty Cash and you imagine that he's someone that trains very well, is very reliable. You don't see him someone that's been a bit of a diva and is turning up to training late. You think of all of those intangible qualities that you imagine that Matty Cash has that we do deem very important, and we know that managers hold very important as well. And so, yeah, for those players that kind of turn up on the first day of training every summer and think, right, I have to prove myself all over again. What I did last season is now gone, and I have to prove that I am Aston Villa's best option in this position. And they continue to do so when they are unfancied year after year after year is really, really impressive. And so, yeah, for Matty Cash to keep doing it with a smile on his face, keep like genuinely enjoy playing for our football club. I think ultimately is a credit to him, to be honest with you.
yeah, absolutely. And I think a player that we need to talk about, maybe for the wrong reasons here, and it's through no fault of his own, is Jadon Sancho, because the tweets that I'm seeing, the narratives that are being spun are absolutely crazy about the sub being subbed and only getting 50 minutes and this and that. he came on because Buendia was injured, and Sancho is clearly a player that isn't fit. So when I'm logging on and I'm seeing like all of these football Twitter accounts, like kind of insinuating that he'd like dropped a stinker, it just doesn't sit right with me. And it's the kind of thing that, would only be tweeted about a player like Jadon Sancho. And is it the Manchester United tag that comes with that? Perhaps, because I think there were moments last season as well where like Rashford starts on the bench, gets substituted off, whatever. It becomes this like back page news story almost instantly when it really isn't that deep. So like shout out to Jadon because I thought he looked pretty tidy and looked pretty tidy on Thursday as well. I think we were both in agreement of that, mate. And it's unfortunate, but I think it was more a case of just managing minutes, and it's kind of like it's where we're at in this sort of internet era, right? With football Twitter accounts, that kind of thing, just running their mouth on Twitter, looking to tear down somebody like Jadon, who is clearly going through a bit of a tough time, and clearly owes somebody a lot of money as well, if you believe some of the allegations that have been spread about him. But yeah, I thought he was like he looked pretty tidy. But there was this one moment in the game as well where he was sort of pestering. I think it was Mateus Nunes, and he ends up winning the ball right on the byline. Lovely little bit of skill, gets a shot away from Donnarumma. Then there's another little follow up as well. Both were saved. But in that moment, I was looking at that and I was thinking, I don't think there's many Villa players that would have actually kept that ball in play.
Yeah.
Like he's such a techie baller. Like there's like magnets in his boots, I'm sure, because even when he's dispossessed, he seems to like almost effortlessly like win the ball back, whether that's like accidental or whether it's just like great positioning, whatever. Jadon Sancho, he's like one of the, I think we kind of spoke about it with Rashford, and Asensio definitely last season, mate. Like footballing ability wise, Jadon Sancho is the best footballer at the club. Like, I don't really think that there's much to question there. It's literally just a case of getting him fit and sharp, and that's why he was subbed on and then subbed off, really. I don't think it's that deep, but then, I guess you can kind of look at the flip side of those selection questions and dilemmas, mate. And again, we're kind of here talking about Harvey Elliott, who isn't even included in this squad.
It's pretty crazy, mate. Yeah. Just 167 minutes he's played out of a possible 810 since joining on loan. Always odd. I think when you kind of get these situations, this is like, we thought the Marlon situation was interesting, right? When he first joined, and at least he was on the bench. Do
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, this is like,
yeah,
um, I genuinely, what do you say? What do you, it's complete guesswork, right? Like there's been no, if it was, it's kind of, to what I was just talking about Matty Cash, like, if this is a, I kind of had this conversation with someone the other day talking about Evan Gesson actually. They're kind of saying like, how come Evan Gesson's getting all these minutes and where's Harvey Elliott? And it's like, yeah, but we don't see what it's like at Bodymore, right?
yeah.
And so if like Evan Gesson is rocking up 8 o'clock in the morning every day, doing his gym session, training at 11 out of 10, eating well, never misses a beat. Like say for argument's sake, Harvey Elliott is doing the opposite and he's turning up and he's not training. Obviously, I'm just like completely hypothesizing here,
Yeah,
but it's
of
like, who are
course.
you going to start on Saturday? Like, it doesn't matter like who the best footballer is. You kind of the manager's principles and the principles of the football club have to come first. And like, I do think that and that kind of brings me full circle to the point that I was just making about Matty Cash, right? And so obviously, I'm not saying that Harvey Elliott has done that or that I even think he's the type to do that, to be honest with you, because I don't. But this stuff doesn't happen. Like, this isn't Unai just not fancying him. It's clear that there is a deeper rift here. There's clearly something has happened. I've always had asterisk next to the relationship, given his comments about him post the Sunderland game and stuff like that, where he kind of called him out individually. And I do consider that post-match interview by Unai a bit of an anomaly, really, and kind of that's a rare moment where I think he lost his cool. And I was pretty concerned by it in the podcast, kind of saying that it's rare that managers really turned it. Once you start digging out players publicly, it's rare that managers turn it around. And Unai has seemingly done that, and fair play to him. But yeah, there's always been a bit of an odd situation around Harvey Elliott, which is odd given that everything we know about transfers, this isn't the club making signings for Unai that he disagrees with by everything that you read about the club. It's Unai gets final say on signing. So he's, clearly sanctioned, if not, been one of the main drivers in getting Harvey Elliott's signature done and completed, and then to kind of see the lack of impact he's made, especially given the goal at Brentford and stuff like that when we hadn't scored yet this season. Like, he's delivered, and you imagine it's something going on behind the scenes, be that at Bodymore or elsewhere, that Unai is not happy with. And if this is a matter of principles, I think that explains why, maybe he isn't the better footballer of the two, but someone like Evan Gasson is going to get the minutes.
Yeah, it's one of them we'll never know, and you have to trust Unai. But I think the only the bit of hope that I'm maybe delusionally clinging on to here is like you look at Tillemans and how little he featured like immediately, and like it isn't like a totally new thing for a new signing to be iced out. You obviously mentioned Marlon as well, and you just have to go back and listen to any podcast from like 3 weeks ago to January when we signed him to listen to us have an absolute meltdown over this guy not starting and thinking like, oh, like just leave Daniel, please, like do it for your sake. And obviously look at him now, he's turned it around. So yeah, there's that faith that that will happen and that there's maybe this bedding in process. But yeah, of course, like like the conversation you're having there, mate, like Gessan's in straight away,
Mhm.
even after a couple of maybe questionable cameos at the start. But obviously, like you look at Evan. I think you know what you get from him, and I think we know what we get from Harvey Elliott. To be fair, but I think the other thing to probably consider as well is it's like 5, 6, 7 years of Jurgen Klopp heavy metal football, full on attack it, and obviously he's not necessarily featured all this time, but being as involved in the training and all that kind of stuff. To then go and you know, sign for a manager who is like the antithesis of heavy metal football. It is, it's the orchestra to the rock concert, right? Playing for Unai Emery. So maybe there's a bedding in period, maybe. That's just reminded me actually when we never got a chance to spoke about this because we didn't really we didn't do a podcast after finals. Loads of issues getting in the ground. I know you and the listeners will have all seen that on Twitter. The the near crush that happened and all this kind of nonsense. But we all got boarded on a train. We all got boarded on trains that like dropped you right outside of the Coip, and you'd go over the platform, and then there was like a set of turnstile. There was like two sets of turnstiles, and you were kind of in these sort of like holding areas. It was an absolute shit show how it was organised, mate. And like just as we were getting to the front, hear these people kicking off, and they've sort of got these like southern accents. I didn't sound like Burmese, and they're like, "Oh, we're friends and family. We're friends and family," and like they wouldn't let him in, and I think they had to go in through a different entrance. And I may be speculating, but I just assumed I'm hearing English accent, Southern accent, white guys. I'm like, oh, this might be Harvey Elliott's family. And they seem very frustrated. Understandably too, because I was frustrated as well, because we almost got fucking crushed by the situation that we were in. Um, but yeah, it's like, for them, obviously they've gone and had a little trip. They've gone abroad, they've gone to go watch their relative. It may not have been Elliot, it could have been whoever. I am just speculating at this part. I'm just putting one and one together and thinking I've got two. But I've been on those kind of trips as well. Like myself, going to see people play in Europe that I know, and I know that they can be like stressful. And obviously, you put a lot of time and effort into travel, and obviously the fans do as well. So like there is a lot of sympathy there. But for them to like go that whole way, and you know, maybe it's their relative, maybe it's not, but them not play, that sucks. That really sucks. And maybe that exasperates a feeling that then sort of gets passed on. Again, I don't know that it was them necessarily. I'm just
Mhm.
hypothesizing. A lot of the things were kind of lining up, but yeah, it's not like you do kind of. He's probably sat there questioning a lot of things, mate. Really, isn't he? And it was kind of, and this is like a whole of the podcast in itself, right? I was saying to the old man on the way to the game, I was like, how many of the players do you think like actually like Unai?
That's a very good question.
It's literally
I
it's a
think
whole
when
podcast, mate. That is a whole podcast in itself.
yeah, it really is because I imagine he's a manager like very intense,
Yeah,
very intense. I often it's really really interesting that you say that. Like I often see, and I saw it again today, like clips. They get it on telly where there'll be an injury break or something like that, and Unai's like giving instructions on the touchline to a player, and it was Ollie Watkins today. And he's got his arm around Ollie, and he's like being really verbal, really intense with his hand gestures. And Ollie, like you can just tell in his body language, like, yeah, okay, okay, Unai
yeah.
want to go now. Like, and he's just like, do you know what I mean? Like, Una's like, move, Jess. And he's like, and he's like, yeah, and he's
It's
just like,
so
yeah,
intense.
okay, let's get this. Yeah, okay, yeah, thanks, boss. And I see it all the time, and I'm like, I imagine when things are going well, like that kind of intensity you see when you see the value of it. I think it's really, really like obviously you probably buy into it, but I imagine that and this I think is why it's probably why Unai Emery's less successful eras really have crashed and burned because he is so uncompromising and because he is so intense and because he's so meticulous and because you hear about these analysis sessions that are several hours long
Yeah,
and he's like sweating the small things to the nth degree and he's got this like granular obsession with football. I imagine when those aren't translating into results, and maybe the players are starting to question things. That's why I think that he usually goes down in flames, maybe a little bit.
yeah,
Like when you look at his Arsenal exit and at PSG and how like everywhere he's gone, maybe barring Sevilla and clubs like that, it has even his spells in. You kind of hear about his time at I think Spartak Moscow and stuff like that, where just like didn't work out at all. And I imagine that you like him or you don't. And I know
yeah.
that's like a really like blunt way to round it all off. But yeah, when things are good, but I do understand like particularly why like certain players, certain personalities. I imagine that does really great with some people, actually.
I think the bottom line is you don't have to be liked, you have to be respected. And I think he's respected by everyone, right? I just thought it was an interesting thing, and I think it tied in well with the Elliot thing because yeah, he's probably thinking like, what have I got to do? And then, I'm sure you could like snap cut to Daniel Marlin in the dressing room going, ah man, like it's just how it
Let me
is.
tell you a
Like,
story.
yeah, exactly. Like I'm sure they've all bonded over some interesting stories there. But yeah, I do find it interesting. And like you don't have to be liked. You just have to be respected. Um but and like Pep's the same, right? You think any of them
Yes,
players like Pep?
that's
No.
exactly right. Very two not stylistically, but personality wise, like even the way that they handle the press, I think there's a lot of comparisons you can draw between Unai and Pep.
Definitely. There was I saw a post actually and it was like, oh, like 10 years 12 years ago they were managing in La Liga and now they're managing in the Premier League. And I was like, yeah, like they've been doing this for the past like 8 years. Get with the program. Like there's just some shit online, man. There's just some shit online. Um but yeah, I think it's interesting and I have faith that Harvey Elliott will play a massive role. And Jadon Sancho as well. Like these are two incredibly talented players, and again, probably two of the best like footballers at the club. So I think you have to find a way to make it work.
Well,
Uh,
ultimately now when there's videos of Buendia leaving Villa Park on crutches,
yeah,
right?
there you go.
And so there's a spot, and it's got you imagine one of three names on it: it's Evan Gesson, Harvey Elliott, or Jadon Sancho. You know, so it's
Absolutely.
like I think the next kind of if Emmy is out for a semi-prolonged period, and I hope he's not. Um, there's Amy Buendia, like kind of going back to players that have written off and have really proved themselves. There's another name, but there's a real opportunity there for one of three players to kind of make sure that try and make sure that Buendia when he comes back, Unai's got a real decision to make, and
Yeah,
so I think who we see kind of claim that spot would be really really interesting over the next few weeks.
I think it will be, mate. I think it will be. Before we round it off, I've got to give a shout out to Joe, who sat behind me in the Holte today, loves the podcast, and he was like, "Where have you been? You've not done a podcast in a while." And I was like, I was glad like that. I was a question that I was like happy to sort of receive because
Life.
it's flat. Yeah, yeah, life. We've been busy. I've moved house and all that kind of stuff, so it is totally my fault. But no, like I took it as like obviously he enjoyed the
Yeah.
podcast and he wants more of it. So here we are doing more. And I promised him we'd do one today. We promised each other that we'd do one today as well, didn't we, Dan? So
Hey, when you beat
um,
Man City, it's easy to do podcasts, right?
absolutely,
You
absolutely. These
know?
are the best podcasts. We love doing these podcasts, but
Yeah.
you guys know that we've got enough credit in the bank with some of the shit podcasts we've done over the years in the championship
Yeah.
and all sorts. But we'll be here, rain or shine, and hopefully you guys will be too. So yeah, let us know in the
Yes,
comment
sir.
section down below who your man of the match is. And we didn't really get to talk about Liverpool too much, mate, but that feels like a winnable game after this weekend, after the result, the Brentford result, after this result, and we could be in like a really nice position. Before we end, the league is this league is crazy, mate. This league is crazy.
Yeah, we're 3 points off second.
And who's in second? Sunderland. Like what? It's mad. It's
It's been
absolutely mad. Man United
yeah,
in fourth. It's the league is so backwards, and we certainly do look back on those Sunderland and Brentford's draw and defeat and think maybe they weren't that bad. Maybe,
it's a
maybe they
very
weren't that
good
bad.
point. Very good point.
But these things either age wonderfully or horrifically as the season goes on, and yeah, hopefully we can be talking this time next week, mate, about an absolutely riveting win at Anfield. But yeah, guys, let us know in the comment section down below your man of the match, your thoughts on the game. If you haven't already, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. If you're on Apple Music, Spotify, share, follow, download. It all helps out more than you can know. Up the Villa.